Welcome to The Laws of Style, featuring conversations on creativity, fashion, and the law from the leading edge of our economy and culture. Hosted by noted fashion lawyer Douglas Hand.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, The Laws of Style, downloading to you from the law offices of HBA, high above Bryant Park in the Fashion District of New York City. I'm your host, fashion lawyer, fashion law professor, and self-styled, well-dressed man, Douglas Hand. I'm joined today by friend and women's footwear designer, Ruthie Davis. Ruthie, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So, somewhat like me, you were a bit of a preppy jock in high school and in college. You went to Bowdoin. Is that right?
Bowdoin.
Bowdoin. I always get that one wrong. Bowdoin.
It's
Bowdoin.
okay.
And you were the captain of not only the tennis team but the squash team. So you're a capable racket woman, a capable skier as well. Tell us about those years and that time, and how you think athletics, in a way, informed your approach to academia, to design, and your life.
Well, great question, because athletics have always been a huge part of my life, and they still are today. I'm what you could call a sporty girl. I grew up in a New England family, and it's just what we did. You were you were outdoors. We weren't allowed to watch TV. We had to be outside, hiking, walking, skiing. That's just from day one. I mean, I started skiing when I was 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. And so it was very much, the fabric of my life. And I think it was kind of the first place where I really got to express myself as an individual, as an athlete. Because if you think about it, when you're a kid, and I'm, from everything from a little kid to junior high to high school, even into college, you can't really sort of perform on a stage with the adults, with other people, where it's equal footing. Right. But with sports, you kind of can. You can beat your brother in tennis. You can, you can give your father a run for his money. You can, whereas it's not like you have a job. You can't compete in the job world. So I kind of found it's for me, sports became an outlet for a way to sort of have goals and to compete. I was, and to it was exciting for me, and it was something that was a larger thing than just within my school. I was on the New England tennis circuit, and I was a Mad River Glen hopeful, which is a junior racer. They call it hopeful. I guess we weren't yet. They weren't sure if we were going to make it.
Yeah.
And I think so. I really loved that. I spent a lot of time doing that. But I also always had a love of fashion and how you look. And so, at a young age, my sport outfits were everything. I mean, I would, when I was skiing, I thought it was a black tie event. I just remember.
And I think, and this is a personal predilection, right? I think snowboarding kind of killed a lot of the après ski style, and a lot of the cool Wagner stretch pant looks that you saw when we were kids skiing in the 70s and 80s, right? It was, so that was kind of an apex of that look.
Yeah.
Did that in a way help inform your design, or?
In a huge way. I mean, I grew up watching the Jetsons. I've always been into futurism. I've been into tech. I've been into sport. I always like the James Bond girl in the one-piece cat suit shushing down the mountain. That to me is sexy. That to me is amazing. I always liked a one-piece ski suit, like a stretch Wagner, like you're saying. I was wearing Montclair well before it was cool. I remember also just literally, crying, pleading to my parents to get new ski boots. It was everything for me. If I didn't have the new color buckle boot, I would beg, and they would not necessarily give me these things.
Well, Northeastern parents, right? That's that's the preppy ethos.
It was a whole.
What did your older sister have?
Exactly. I had huge hand-me-downs, and so I really, and I'm thinking back in like when I played field hockey in high school, junior high, I used to put together my kilt in a certain way. I always hiked mine up, made it a little shorter. I would my tennis outfits, that's back when bandanas were in, so I'd wear the bandana and, I would have these cool outfits. And I really, also, a lot, when I was growing up, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not, I'm older, I guess, growing up, like you said, 70s, 80s. And even back then, like when I was in college at Bowdoin College, cabinet tennis team, a lot of the girls who were sort of the jocks, if you will, they were kind of, the really good athletes kind of dressed less feminine, because it was like, if you're a good athlete, you got to dress kind of, we used to call it their jockey. It's like a jockey look. It's like more like a guy, and I was never that. I'd wear my high ponytail and my ribbon. It would match my skirt. And I used to love that, and I'd go out against these other teams, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, I'm going to beat that girl."
Right, sporty Barbie.
Yeah, and then I would beat them. And that, to me, I used to love that. So anyways, this segued into what I've always loved in fashion, which is the coming together of sort of futurism, tech, sport, and then function with high fashion. And so that has always been, from day one, I've loved it and I've been into it. I remember when Prada Sport launched and Chanel Sport, I think that was in the 90s. They coming. That was when I was working at Reebok, and every time I'd go to Hong Kong for work, I would go to they had the store Joyce in Hong Kong, and they would have all the Prada Sport, and I would buy up as much as I could afford, because it was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I like. It was like finally the coming together of the things I loved.
Right. So I'm not going to be a slave to chronology here, but we'll put a pin in Reebok.
Okay.
And what we'll talk about is, from college, you went on to get an MBA. From having the MBA, you then went into design. So was there anything about obtaining the MBA or that process of focusing on marketing and a bit of finance and a bit of management that made you feel like those skills were best deployed for a fashion brand?
I have a very unique story for a fashion designer in that, yes, I did not go to a design school. I went to liberal arts college, majored in English, minored in visual arts. I always liked art. I always liked drawing. But I never thought it could be a career. I come from a family of marketers. My grandfather wrote the first textbook in America on advertising. He was the head of the journalism department at Penn State. So and then other people in the family have been, my brother was a big advertising guy when I was in college. He lived in New York City, and I used to visit him. I just didn't think I could be a designer. I don't know why, it just didn't register. I actually wanted to be combining the sort of the communications and the sports. So I thought I want to be in the sports journalism is what I originally thought. And so I did have a career. I did work at ESPN. I did work at the Hartford Courant. And I opened my own business, which was actually a workout studio. And I also, did videos because I had done the on-air stuff with ESPN. So I thought I wanted to be like an on-air sports whatever. And I think that was the first taste of this being an entrepreneur, but not just being an entrepreneur where I was the product, because I was marketing myself as the instructor, walk the walk, like look, you work hard, you can look, have a good workout body, and I would have to design the classes, market myself to them to come to my classes.
And the element of brand
and then it was branding with my own name, as well as running a business.
From graduation from liberal arts school, a great one, to some work experience, and then getting an MBA and focusing on marketing. Did that inform your job choice in design, or how did your first design job come about?
I think I was coming out of Babson. Obviously, I had run my own business, the workout studio. I knew I wanted to do something with in the sports world, communications, marketing, sort of entrepreneurial. And I had a couple interviews lined up, the first round of interviews with, which were interesting, Gatorade, the NBA Association, and Reebok. All of which were in the Boston area, which is where
Boston,
Babson is.
all sporty.
Yeah, all sporty and all different.
Yeah.
So I was trying out different things. The first interview was at Reebok, and I actually went in for a job that was sort of more marketing oriented. It was called Marketing Communications Specialist.
Okay.
And long story short, I went in for one job, and in the middle of the interview, they interrupted me and said, this would be great, but we have this other job that you're technically...
Hey, Bob, Sally,
Yeah.
you got to meet this girl.
Yeah, it was that kind of thing. And so next thing I know, I just had the right elements they were looking for. I'd done the sort of the power walking, the fitness walking with the gym I had, and they needed someone in associate product manager in the walking division. And even though I was technically underqualified, they just liked this combination of this person who kind of, been the instructor and had an MBA.
Right.
And
new brand. Because you
Right.
went in to interview for a sort of brand-facing job,
Right.
And I guess came out
Yeah.
with a job
Right.
in product with describe that job. What
Well,
within
it's
the
great.
Reebok empire
I
were
was
you
very
handling?
lucky because Reebok's an excellent company, especially to cut your teeth on, to learn the business. They send you overseas. You go to the factories. The way that Reebok was structured at the time, I don't know if it still is, they had these silos. So every sport was almost like its own little business own
Business unit.
venture. And so
Yeah.
you had someone in charge of that division, if you will, whether it's tennis, running, aerobics, whatever. And so basically they ran it like its own machine, and the person in charge would coordinate the marketing, the design, the sales, the merchandising, all of that. And so it was very much what I had studied as in entrepreneurship. And so it was a very exciting time, and I approached it from the get-go as I really wanted to know, I was taught this as in my MBA, to really learn the customer. Part of marketing is, the 4 Ps of marketing, and people is one of them. And so I was a big believer in really understanding the customer. So this was sort of pre-Instagram, I don't know, cell phone, I think. I mean, it was like pre-everything.
Email?
And I think barely pre-email.
You
I think
checked
we
your
had
email once at the end of the day.
I think we had inter-office
Right.
mail. Like, I don't think email was like I don't know. I can't even remember, but it was like, and so really it was all about, like, when I was in walking, I went out and started walking. I went and interviewed people. I walked the New York Marathon. They couldn't sell walking shoes overseas as well as in America, which were mostly white walking shoes.
Yeah.
And I went over and walked this 4-day event they had in Nijmegen, Holland. And, all the executives, they had me write a report of my findings. And it was real simple. It was like, they're not walking in white walking shoes. They're walking in brown walking shoes. So, I ended up creating this off-road walking, like, collection, so it was like, this is what I like to do, these little collections of things that has and I designed an outsole on the walker that was a map of Holland, so there was a story behind it.
Yeah.
And, these kinds of things. And when I was in the classics...
Did you get it trademarked?
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately
Reebok
not.
legal. They should have been on that.
When I was in the classic division, it was so great because I did my research, and the classics in the 90s, they were the white, the classic leather jogger, the freestyle, the princess. They've been around since the 70s when they came, the company came to America from London. And they are what people wear, not for sport, but just for, hanging out. And what was lacking, and the reason they were getting a little stale in the market, was because they didn't sort of hook up with what people were wearing. And this was the 90s when the hookups was born. The whole concept of, like, I want my sneakers to hook up with my outfit.
Right.
And so I used to take a bag of shoes and go to the markets, which were Philly, DC, Harlem, me and my colleagues, and we would literally talk to consumers on the street and say, how do you want us to make this shoe? And the girl would be like, well, I'd like the freestyle in bright yellow to match my bright yellow bubble jacket.
Right.
And we would do it, Yeah, it
Right.
wasn't rocket science.
Right.
And so I loved doing new collections. So I did this, I called them classic derivatives, and I did these ice colored outsoles that are like icy blue rubber on the jogger. I did the colored freestyle. I did the chunky bottom. All of these like kind of new versions of the classics. And it was super exciting, got a lot of traction, and I actually got a lot of press as the cool hunter. They called me the cool hunter of Reebok. So it was kind of like I was sort of making my mark as being, almost a stylist. So one of the things that I really, and when I talk to young people in design, there's many different ways to approach being a designer. And I'm much more of a designer where marketing and design overlap. Whenever I design, I don't just like sit by a stream and draw a beautiful shoe. It's very much, there's a brief. It's like, who's the customer? What's the purpose? What are they, what is their favorite color? What are they wearing? What's working now? And it's more problem solving. Also it's what I want, what I think is cool, what's on trend. And then I take all that and I put it in a blender and design a shoe. And I kind of learned that. I started honing that skill at Reebok. And that's when I realized like I had better ideas than a lot of the designers. And in fact, my ideas would sell really, really well, like huge numbers. And that's when, UGG started calling me, and they basically, a headhunter called me and they were like, we want you to come work at UGG. And they basically said, we want you to do with the classic UGG what you did with the classic Reebok.
Got it. So UGG snatched you from Reebok. You had updated the classic program, and it still is.
Well, they're bringing them all back now.
From your playbook.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw, I know of Gigi Hadid's collaboration with them. I mean, they've got one with Opening Ceremony. They've got a number of collaborations, which we'll get into, that being part of the Ruthie Davis playbook as well.
Right.
But also just updating the classics. And so UGG, which I know from being born and raised Southern Californian, as an ugly surf boot, right?
Yeah.
It kept your feet warm on the beach. You didn't really wear it in the street, and that's what it stood for. And it had a great name in that little narrow market segment, but all of a sudden it blew up, and they needed to find style points somewhere. So they hire Ruthie Davis. What was that experience like?
It was a great experience because, again, I feel very fortunate that I was sort of in the right place at the right time. The funny part, and I rarely tell this to many people. This is insider information. It's kind of interesting. So at first they emailed me and they said they were focused more. I don't know if you've ever heard of Simple Shoes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it Southern California?
Yeah, it's the same.
It's a skate
they're owned by Decker's Outdoor Corporation, which owned Simple and UGG.
Okay.
And Teva sports sandals. Okay. Those were their three brands. So they actually first started talking more about Simple.
Okay.
And, they wanted to update that like the classics and make it more, everything. And then there was kind of a little talk of UGG, but it wasn't like, and when I went out there to interview, that's when they're like, oh, well, we want you to do Simple and UGG, so it became,
the old conglomerate,
you're
not being hired for one job.
Yeah.
You're being hired for three because we have three portfolio companies.
And this is the truth. When I went out there, and one of the reasons I also wanted to work there because it was in Santa Barbara, California, and I'd had one too many winters in Boston. I was like, I love you, Reebok, man, but I'm sick of digging out my car on Newberry Street.
I can root for the Gauchos. That's
right,
fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but what was really interesting, and they actually used to say this at the company, they used to call UGG the black sheep of the company, which is so funny because now it's like the superstar of the company. And it was always an afterthought because it was like a surfer dude thing. And it was like, they wanted it to be, authentic, organic, just to do its thing in the surfer community.
Yeah.
And it was
very hard from that design, that iconic sheepskin boot design.
Right.
To envision much else. I mean, where do you take design from that to where it is now, which is candidly kind of all over the place?
Right. So basically, it's real simple. They wanted a woman from the East Coast, where they weren't selling UGG as well as the West Coast. So I knew the East Coast, and they wanted someone who had the fashion angle and the marketing angle that could bring that to the design. And as I always tell people, I didn't reinvent the wheel at UGG. I just added the sizzle to the steak. They had a great product, and they still do. It's a great functional product. And they just needed to do some tweaking to make it more valid. But in addition, they had never hired, I was the first, marketer, designer person they hired to be in charge of UGG. And so I put in a marketing plan, and they gave me a budget. And, it was the first time I hired a New York PR agency. I did product seeding in LA, like to the TV shows, the studios, so that they would wear Uggs on TV. Because Uggs is a very recognizable product. Some products you can see it on TV and you don't know what they are if you don't see the label or something.
Right.
An Ugg boot, you just see it. So it's like a really great for that kind of marketing.
Trade dress.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of I repositioned the product as more luxury, like, because the East Coast, we think of sheepskin as luxury. And then we did some more sort of luggy outsoles, kind of made them more weatherproof.
Right.
Because the perception on the East Coast was that they weren't.
These won't hold up. And
they
they
wouldn't
didn't
hold up.
Early
No,
Uggs
the
that
original
I used to wear on the streets
Ugg,
of New
yeah.
York City did not hold up.
Right. So we kind of redesigned it, tweaked it, repositioned it. And what people, it took 3 years of like a marketing plan, redesigning product, all of this before it took off. And it was in, early 2000 that Uggs became the hot new fashion thing, and everybody was wearing Uggs with their, little jean skirts
Right.
and whatever it was.
It was
But
a full-on
it
look.
wasn't by happenstance. This was a planned thing where they said, we need to do this. They hired people like myself, and
you were out there the whole time, out on the West Coast.
Yeah.
And so what was that experience like? I mean, you were such a Northeasterner
Yeah.
at that point. How foreign was Santa Barbara, or how at home were you there? Because, again,
Yeah.
I self-described myself as a preppy jock.
Yeah.
But I'm from Southern California. There kind of was
Right.
or is, I think, some affinities to certain regions of Southern California to certain regions outside of Boston. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I mean, I think I had always personally loved the West Coast when I was at Reebok and just growing, I would visit the West Coast a lot, and I knew I had an affinity. I'm a very outdoorsy person. I love the sun. I love the outdoors. I love cutoff shorts, so I love the whole like surfer dude concept, so Malibu Barbie, it's always been a thing I've been into. So that was easy to adjust to. It was funny though, because when I first moved out there, was working there, I remember I used to shut down the building because they would all be at 5 o'clock. Everybody left work. They all went surfing or whatever it was.
Right.
And, I had that East Coast work ethic where I would just like stay. So that was an adjustment. And it was an adjustment to have the weather nice every day. I was like, I need a rainy day now and then to, get caught up.
Yeah. The lack of seasonality for a fashion person can be a little disorienting.
Yeah, because you can't, the outfits are, especially because I like winter outfits, like ski outfits.
Of course
it was a
you
little
do.
tough.
Yeah.
But all in all, I
Mammoth
loved
Mountain's
it.
not that far away, though.
No, that's true. And so, all in all, I loved it, and it was an exciting. But the main reason it was important in my career is it was kind of like I kind of tested the water at Reebok, and then with UGG, it was like I was a bigger fish in a smaller pond, and I really saw that I made a difference, and it gave me the confidence to say I could do this for myself.
Yeah.
I could do my own brand.
Right. Then you went to Tommy for a period of time,
Right.
and that was focused on footwear as well.
Yes, I was in charge of women's footwear
Okay.
and marketing. And then, of course, when I accepted the job, they then informed me I'm also going to do men's footwear marketing.
Right.
Not men's footwear, just the marketing of it.
Okay.
They added that on.
Yeah.
But, honestly, I was planning to launch Ruthie Davis, or my own brand. When I was at Uggs, I was starting to think about it. I kind of did what I needed to do there. And I was I actually had designed the collection and, started like working on it simultaneously while I was there, figuring out my next move. And that's when, I got a call from Tommy Hilfiger people, and they really made me a great offer. And I talked to sort of my advisors, in my life, people I go to. Everyone was like, look, you've worked at a Reebok, you've worked at an UGG, you haven't worked at like a New York fashion brand. You need that. And again, I come from people who are very into like as much education as possible, so if you can, get more education before you do your own business. So I remember I was almost like, when I was given the offer at Tommy, it was, they moved me across the country and the whole thing. I was like crying because I knew I was going to have to give up my dream for a while. And I was like, I knew I needed to do it and it would be good for my career. It would break me into Manhattan and that whole world. But I was sad. So I put my ideas on ice. And I do remember when I first started at Tommy, it was like in January of like 98, I think, or wait, no, maybe it was 2001. I'm getting to the years. I have to pull my resume. Sorry, I'm getting old.
That's all right.
Whatever it was January. And I just remember they put me up initially in a hotel. I was staying at the W Hotel because, I hadn't gotten an apartment yet, moving across the country. And I actually had shipped from Italy that came to my hotel room my first set of samples for the Ruthie Davis line, which I never did. I just like put on ice.
Right.
It was kind of interesting. So, so I was at Tommy and, the same things I'd done at my other jobs. I was like, okay, how can I make it better? How can I make it cooler? My whole thing with Tommy, it was a little bit too preppy. It wasn't like, there was a side of Tommy that I liked because he had a side that liked the rock and roll. That sort of rock and roll side of Tommy.
Connected with rock and roll and hip hop, so they're very music oriented affiliations.
Yeah, and when I was there at that time, whatever the year was, it was like they'd gotten a little too much in the preppy rut. They were trying to be too that, and they had lost that other kind of appeal. So I really was working to bring that back. And I did shoes that were like a little more high fashion, a little more cool, a little more street. And I launched Tommy Girl shoes, which they never had. That was like, they had Tommy Girl apparel. So I was, again, trying to be entrepreneurial. And, it was a great experience. And I got to understand licensing because I worked between, it was Stride Rite made the shoes and Tommy Hilfiger was like the parent.
Right.
So it was like I had to be the go-between. But, it was a couple years in, 2+ maybe almost 3 years in, and just traveling like crazy. And one day between trips to Brazil and China, my husband stopped me and I was like, I don't have time to talk, I have to pack. And he said, can I just quickly ask you a question? And I was like, sure, what? And he's like, I need like an update. What's your goal these days? Is your goal to be president of Tommy Hilfiger or Tommy Hilfiger? I just needed, I need an update. And I just stood there for a minute, caught in my tracks, because it was like, because I'm the kind of person, I really work hard and I get really into it and I want to please my bosses. And
the blinders come on.
The blinders come on and I just get in the cycle and I need someone to stop me. And I said, Tommy Hilfiger. And he was like, Mom, you better get busy because you ain't getting any younger. So that's when I really started to realize it was time, if I was going to make the leap, to do Ruthie Davis.
So we're at 2006, roughly.
Yeah.
And you launch your eponymous brand.
Correct.
So you had done the legwork, you'll excuse the pun, in terms of understanding product and understanding marketing footwear product. You had some bona fides given some of the vertical integration within Reebok of running a small business. Brand was important. You chose to name the brand after yourself. How much thought went into that decision? Or was it a foregone conclusion just based on the conversation you had with your husband?
That's true. You know what? It's funny because, and when you start out these things, you have big dreams and goals, and and then as time goes on, they evolve. But it's kind of interesting story. I actually, my original logo and trademark, whatever, was actually Davis. Mm-hmm. And my whole thinking at the time, was I loved Chanel, Prada, Gucci. And it's kind of funny that I actually thought I could be the next Prada or Gucci, but whatever the case, I wanted a strong word. I don't know what I read or why I had this on my mind. I just thought Davis would be a cool name. So I was going to name it Davis, or I did name it Davis, and I launched as Davis. And I actually, right from the get-go, had a PR agency, and the celebrities. I had some early adopters of the brand, and apparently my PR people said to me, Ruthie, everybody thinks that you're a man because it's called Davis. They don't know you're a woman, and usually women don't do such sort of like sexy, hot, luxury shoes. Most of that is men designers, like Giuseppe Zanotti, Louis Vuitton, Manolo, Jimmy Choo, the list goes on. And so we think it's interesting. We want to let the world know that you're a woman because that's cool. So they convinced me to call it Davis by Ruthie Davis. So then I know, because I have all these different logos from the shoe, like the little Davis by was kind of a long,
Yeah.
And so that just was a mouthful. Davis by Ruthie Davis. Like, why do I need to do that?
Needlessly circular, right?
And then it was like, if you look at shoes, it's usually the person's name for like a luxury shoe designer.
Yeah.
So I just was like, Christian Louboutin, Ruthie Davis, So I finally just went with Ruthie Davis.
Okay.
So I didn't really think,
Did you have any conversations with any advisors at that point in time about it being an eponymous brand, and then if and when you got to the point of taking on partners, taking on investors, even selling the company or licensing the name out to a third party, that you'd have a personal decision to make in addition to a business decision?
No one actually really advised me on that point for some reason. The only point they advised me on was to make sure I had, like when I incorporated, that the name would be a different name. So if you're sued, it wouldn't be your name being sued, Ruthie Davis. It would be the holding company or whatever.
Right.
So I was advised on that, but I wasn't advised on that other point. And if you ask me that today, right now, for example,
I will.
like, are you worried about
will.
that? Okay, well, do you want me to answer now?
Yeah. How
Okay.
do you?
It's funny because I honestly, I'm going to give you the truth. Like, bring it on. Like, that's a high class problem. If someone invests in me and they paid me X gazillion dollars or $1 million or whatever it is, or like bought my company and they own my name, have fun with it. To a certain, like, let's put it this way. I don't plan on, like, let's say someone buys the Ruthie Davis brand, and then they can do what they want with it, or you have my name.
Right.
I'm fine with that because I don't plan on launching another Ruthie Davis brand. Like I'm only doing that once, So if I'm still involved with the company, like, that's fine. I'll be there to make sure. That's what I'd like, is to still be involved. But I for some reason I'm not that afraid of that. Like, great. You can have my name because I figure if they like go down market or they do like volume shoes, I'll just tell people. I'll be like, yeah, they paid me, X amount, and now they're doing volume.
Well, they may also try to have you adhere to a non-disparagement clause. So
right. So that's fine. I wouldn't say that then.
Yeah. Well, you could say it. You'd just be in breach of the non-disparagement clause. It leads to a number of things like that any investor or acquirer would then care about. I mean, just by way of fairly recent example, last year during the Harvey Weinstein scandal, and really before the Me Too movement had a lot of traction, Donna Karan, when asked for comment about Harvey Weinstein, made some statements that most of the world viewed as supportive of him, and many wholesale accounts actually dropped the Donna Karan line.
That, yeah.
Yeah. Donna Karan doesn't own her company any longer,
right,
so that didn't really hurt her. But G3, who did own the company, had a real negative impact there. So investors or acquirers have to take certain precautions if the name is, or John Galliano and his rant, right? Like, that's an obvious business risk that you don't have if it's called the purple alligator, or there are conversations that, for instance, I have with early stage companies, if I'm catching them early enough before they've decided to name the brand, that might steer them away from eponymous brands, or at least educate them in terms of knowing what the implications could be in the context of a sale or an investment.
No, it's a really valid point, and I wish I had spoken to you at the outset. But for me, it actually, I'm like 11, 12 years in to having a brand, and I can't imagine it with a different name, because it's kind of like the original job I told you, the workout studio. It's very much, I have this hashtag walk the walk that I use.
Yeah.
And I have to be an active participant. It's really about me.
Yeah.
I'm a woman, my whole story is I'm a woman designing for women. I'm a female entrepreneur. It's Ruthie Davis. It's a stamp of approval.
Yeah.
I design the shoes, I make the shoes, I wear the shoes. I want to represent for you. So if it wasn't my name, it's just my whole brand story wouldn't really work.
Yeah. No, that's a very fair point. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of designers feel that way as well in terms of the authenticity.
Exactly.
So, yes, you are a female entrepreneur and a CEO. And while women as consumers far outweigh men by, by orders of magnitude in terms of dollars spent, they don't outweigh the presence of men in boardrooms and, other C-suite positions. Can you comment on any of the challenges that you faced, whether it was, more institutional at Reebok or UGG, or, just in selling the brand to wholesale accounts, and those wholesale accounts being, again, largely dominated at the C-suite level by male voices?
People ask me that a lot, and I really think, it's funny because it wasn't just that I was in a lot of these, like at Reebok and places like that, there were a lot more men than women. And it wasn't just so much I was towing the woman line, it was also the fashion line, because they were very, more techie,
Right,
So it's like I was pushing the fashion angle. I was more aware of pushing the fashion angle than the woman angle, if that makes sense. But honestly, in my career, first of all, I'm very lucky because I'm very, very grateful that I had an incredible upbringing and incredible parents. And from day one, they said you could be whatever you want to be. You have to work hard, good New England parents. You have to find your passion, work hard. You can do anything. So they never put any limitations on me whatsoever. They treated the daughters and the sons exactly the same. So I'm very lucky to have that. And so that did mold me a lot. And I do come from, a long line of women. All of my grandmothers went to college. I think my great-grandmothers went to college. And I'm the youngest of 6 kids, so that's pretty old, That was like women didn't even go to college. I know my great-grandmother, my mother's mother's mother, was a milliner in San Diego. So my mother was a naval brat. Her father was an admiral in the Navy, so she lived all throughout the world. She was actually born in San Diego, but she was a hat designer. So she had her own hat brand. So I've always kind of had this very strong female, they all were educated, they had careers. So it never was a thing for me. I think, and as far as the whole, the Me Too movement and the women's movement, the angle that I always take on that is really more about focusing on what I like to call, I'm a big girl power person. Okay. I'm all about women supporting women. And I focus more on, it's not about the men and the women, it's more about the women supporting the women that I think is where I like to keep it focused. Because you can't control everybody. You can't control the universe, but as women, we can support each other. And, historically, I think it's things have changed and women are much more supportive of each other now. But I know that women can sometimes be competitive with other women, and I like the feeling. I'm a big proponent of I like to be surrounded by women who are smarter than me, prettier than me, doing more than me. I like that. That I get excited by that, and it's not like you have to be put other women down to move up. I think those days are done where there's enough room for a couple women at the top. So that's kind of, I think, back when I was in the ranks, there weren't as many women in the higher roles, so it was a little bit of I don't want to say cat fight, but it was almost like competitive within the women.
Yeah. And there was only one role at the top, and you had to fight it out because they weren't going to make room.
And so
perhaps based on merit, they were going to just fill what they felt was an acceptable quota of some minority representation.
Right. So I just think that the key is for women to focus on supporting each other and I think that women can do anything.
Well, recently you've partnered with Disney on a very, very successful collaboration, Disney Princess X, Ruthie Davis. I'm never sure with the X or by or, the
Right.
X. The X is literally an X in most
Right.
cases, but a brand collaboration with
Yes.
Disney that we worked on together. You
Correct.
did most of the
Thank
work.
you for
I
that.
simply papered.
Yeah.
Um,
Appreciate your help.
but characters like Snow White, Mulan, Jasmine. So a spectrum of Disney princesses,
Correct.
some from really, really early Disney tales, fairy tales, to the more current ones. Do you think that collaboration, or your business in particular, provides a platform to speak to teenagers, young women, older women who can
Yeah.
wear the product in a positive way?
100%. Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, the Disney collaboration came about, they actually found me. I had done something with Home Shopping Network with Beauty and the Beast, and they said, "Can we work with her directly? Do you mind?" And so, and the reason is they did their research, and Disney is all about storytelling. So when they collaborate with and do products, they have a huge division that's all products and licensing of their assets. They look for partners that basically fit with perpetuate the story.
Yeah.
That are in sync with the story. So when they're looking for someone to do Disney princess shoes for adults, they would like to have someone who can represent a modern day princess. And they were like, wow, this is great. This is a woman. She's a female entrepreneur. She's working hard, going after her dreams, independent, all of that. And so they're like, we need to meet her because this can be, this is really in sync with the Disney princess story, because that's the whole point. So that's how that came about. And it's been an incredible partnership, collaboration, working with them. I actually work with mostly all women at Disney, and they're an amazing company to work with. And they're very involved with charities, like as far as they have this whole thing called Girl Up, and it's all about, it's involved with girls, underprivileged girls, girls who need help with different things, education, etc. They're very much into, their hashtag is #DreamBigPrincess. So these are all things that I buy into as well. So this was like a marriage made in heaven between me and Disney Princess. But in general, with the Ruthie Davis brand, as I always say, well, my brother-in-law is a brain surgeon. I was like, I'm not doing brain surgery here. This is shoes. I'm not curing cancer. But if I can make women feel good in any way, give them a little bit of a confidence lift, maybe inspire them, make them feel good when they wear my shoes, that they can, when they walk in the room, they have a certain posture, certain gait. I always tell people I don't design shoes to make a woman look like sexy or good for a man. That is not what I do. I've designed shoes for the woman. I always say for the woman to stand tall for herself. And so I'm always, and I mentioned walk the walk. I do like a soundbite. I come from advertising people. So like #walk the walk I use a lot, and I really, and I was doing walk the walk back at Reebok when I walked a 4-day walking event.
Right.
This is a theme, a thread in throughout my life where I like to be an active participant and practice what I preach, and I like to set an example that for young women that anybody can do anything, that you just have to do it, so
Yeah.
it's, if I can giving back to women, I'm very into girl power. I really am, and especially passing it forward to young people. And they could actually be boys too. I mean, if they want, I like boys too. So, girls or boys, or men or women, I should say. I speak a lot to different, but they can be business students, they can be design students. I'm on a bunch of committees or boards of an education committee or this and that. And it's always, the same message.
Yeah. What's interesting about what the fashion industry puts out there in terms of product, I mean, let's face it, your products are not really about clothing as they are about an attitude and a confidence that the wearer can get from them. And that's what high fashion items are. No one needs high fashion items. They're not necessarily practical in certain ways in terms of functionality. They have to function. And given the height of some of your heels, it's a marvel that they do function. It's a high bar of functionality. But what you are giving people is actual emotion, positive emotion and confidence. And the laws of style, which maybe you've read, maybe you haven't. It's geared towards men.
I have.
Yes, of course you have. That's a lot of what we talk about in terms of putting yourself forward in the most confident way that you can. Because if your clothes help you do that, then it becomes this positive feedback circle where people are looking at you a certain way because you've walked into the room and maybe you looked a few inches higher. And your chin was up, and then all of a sudden you're getting that feedback back from them, and you are even more elevated just in terms of your personal confidence. And that can lead not just to how you look, but the things that you say and the weight that they carry, which for a lot of occupations, certainly lawyers, is an important thing. And so I think it's great that you've found a collaboration that also carries that message and, along with some of, the stories that we cherish. You've done a number of collaborations over the years. I guess talk about how those have come about, and are they similarly aligned with the girl power or walk the walk, or do some of them just come about because they, they're just natural in the cycle of the company?
I think it's a combination. It's just most of it's organically evolves, or I may set my mind on something and just kind of go after it that I think could work. I liken it to my entrepreneurial roots. I think it's this whole thing of staying valid in the industry. You don't want to get stale, and by doing these collaborations, it's something new. It creates a new concept. It's a new product, and I just love the concept of collaboration. In fact, when I launched Ruthie Davis, this was, back in, 2006, whatever.
Right.
But when I was working on it, it was a little before 2006, like 2005, because, the first collection was.
Right.
So I used to tell people, because they would say, you're designing a shoe brand. That's so hard. Like, what is it going to look like? And they would have all these questions. And so I realized I needed a good soundbite. So I used to say, well, I'll tell you what it's going to be. And they go, what? I said, well, imagine, and don't forget, this is 2005, so things, that was a bit ago.
Yeah.
So, okay, imagine a Manolo Blahnik and a Nike had a baby. What would it look like?
Yeah.
And boom, they would just look at me with this look like, oh. And they were intrigued. It was like this intrigued look.
Right.
And it would shut them up, actually. Like, they would stop grilling me.
Yeah.
Like, I would give them that. And so I've always, I loved that concept. In fact, that's the whole concept of Ruthie Davis. And I just read an article in Business of Fashion about Off-White Virgil Abloh. And he was saying how a lot of people say that that there's inspiration of other products, that whole concept. And he was likening it to remixes in music and stuff.
Right.
It's a compliment. It's kind of like collaborating. It's like you take a little from this song, a little from this song, you add your little percent of your idea, put it together,
Yeah.
Which I agree with him. I like that. I think that's an interesting thing.
Well, and this is the fashion lawyer talking here, right?
Yeah.
But very little in design is protectable for that reason.
Right.
Every designer stands on the shoulders of the thousands of designers that came before them, and garments have a certain garments and footwear and even accessories have a certain configuration they have to adhere to.
Right.
So it becomes very difficult to start to be proprietary over design unless it is truly novel.
Right.
And that can be a frustrating
But I feel
reality
like
for
if you do
designers.
this new thing, like we're talking, a collaboration, that concept, it does become new.
Yeah.
I know for me, I've never been the person, I don't like vintage shopping. Okay, I don't look to the past for inspiration, which many designers do, and it's wonderful and it's great, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not me. I watch Jetsons. I look to the future. I want innovation. I want to see a new and improved version. When I first started Ruthie Davis, I used to call it high tech, high fashion. I actually trademarked high tech, high fashion. And my whole idea was to, like, I was very literal in the beginning. I had a titanium wedge. Yeah. I had a graphite heel, like my tennis racket. Like, yeah. And which was great in the beginning because it got some press and so on and so forth. But I realized pretty quickly that the consumer didn't really care if it was titanium as long as it looked good or not. Like, they didn't care if it was literally titanium, and the titanium was like really expensive. So I kind of like stopped doing that. But the point is I really think that collaborations it's how I design my shoes every day. It's to your point, yes, there's nothing new that you can totally new, but you can do the new. And it's going to have a degree of the old in the new, but it's still going to be new. Yeah. And it's going to be something you haven't seen before, you know?
It's like a lot of creative processes where it's an amalgam of what's going on in the cultural zeitgeist.
Right.
And I think what designers can rightly get upset about is when a fast fashion purveyor is not only appropriating the designs that the smaller designer, if you will, has come out with for that season, but maybe the whole context in which they've come out with them. You know, it's one thing to say, oh, we came up with the same A-line skirt for this season, but we're shooting it in the exact same way as this brand.
Right.
And we're using the same sort of lighting techniques.
That's a whole other level.
Yeah. Right. Then it's fair to say I'm generating goodwill by sort of being on the forefront of style. This person who can do things very, very quickly is just riding my jet stream.
So to answer also your question about collaborations and do they come organically and everything, I think that's what's important is you got to figure out your niche. It's a very crowded, competitive marketplace. And part of it is what you like as a brand or what your brand idea is, but also listening to what works and what the consumers want from you and what the market wants from you. And one thing that's been with me since day one with my brand is it was adopted by the entertainers pretty early on. Beyonce, Gaga, Ariana Grande. And I always tell people, they say, well, why these? And I say, well, think about it. These are women who want to feel great on stage and they have to move. Yeah. So they go to me because my shoes, they're high, they're this and that, but they're actually comfortable because I'm a woman designing them and I test drive them. I make sure you can move in them because I'm all about movement. One of the reasons I do a lot of platforms is because they're more comfortable than when you see a stiletto, which is like there's no platform in the front.
Right.
Those are the ones where your feet hurt at the wedding and you have to kick your shoes off. The platforms do not hurt.
And is that because there's some cushioning in the toe there?
It's because it's all about the pitch.
Okay.
So if you see
so the slope is less
it's a lot
typically
less.
in a platform.
Exactly. It's almost like
up.
a lower heel.
Right.
Because you're just higher up. It's like a stilt.
Yeah.
So it's really more about balancing than your feet hurting. So it's so that's why I do a lot of platforms because they're actually more comfortable and you can move, better in them.
But you get the height, and a lot of women want that height. I mean, let's face it.
And you get the height. But in any event, I've always had this connection with sort of the entertainment world and all of that, and it's evolved to where the collaborations that came about, like I did the Minions from Universal Studios. Now I'm doing Disney Princess, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'm listening. I don't just create the story. I also listen to the story and let it evolve naturally. And I like that story that the Ruthie Davis, people think of it as whimsical and kind of entertainment-like and marketing-driven. And so they see me as being good, where entertainment and fashion come together, which I think is a very exciting new coming together in the industry, which, I mean, obviously it's huge now. Yeah. They're all overlapped now.
Yeah. But despite Beyonce and Lady Gaga and other very famous wearers, I think probably the biggest influencer of your brand has been you. So my next question really relates to how have you used social media to the brand's advantage and helped maintain that integrity and authenticity in terms of showing the product?
Well, the integrity is real simple. I do it.
So those are your legs.
Yeah. I mean, well, no, the pictures are, a lot of them are my legs. Yes. It's my legs and the younger, better version of my legs. So I have a model.
Who's your body double?
Yeah, she's my body double. But her legs are better than mine. I'll admit it. Again, I like having, I'm all about a woman could be prettier than I am. Better legs than I do. So she's amazing. And so it's usually one of the other's legs. And the reason I use my own legs a lot is because at the end of the day, people want to see my shoes and how they look in an outfit or how they look on the legs. And when I'm traveling, I'm in different places, they don't really want to see a picture of me. I've been putting up, when I put pictures of my full body up, it's because I want to show my shoes in the context of an outfit. Mm-hmm. That's why I do that. Because a lot of people, they think, oh, how can I wear shoes that high? Or how, they have this image of the type of outfit. And I want to show them it looks good in this outfit or this outfit. So, but they really like what I call a shoefy, which is like a selfie for your shoes.
Okay.
So I actually, I take it like, it's like a selfie, but instead of being up here, it's down there.
You probably know exactly the angle.
I know the angle. I've got it down. And so a lot of them are, that is why I use my legs, because I want it to be authentic and to show that I wear the shoes too. Yeah. Again, walk the walk. I mean, a lot of my competitors are men and they don't wear the shoes. Mm-hmm. So how can they make sure they're comfortable? How can they know the context of a woman's leg and her, that's another big part of my whole thing is and part of the authenticity of the brand is, as a woman, I know what women want. I know what we like our ankles to look slim. We like our, I know the parts of the foot to accentuate. Mm-hmm. I know how to make your leg look attractive. And that's why I always show these leg shots, because actually a lot of girls' legs can look really good in my shoes. It's not, I'm not a model, so it's really about, and my belief, and one of the reasons I love shoes is because I really feel like they become one with the body, much more so than any other item you put on, because it's part of your architecture.
Right.
It becomes part of your structure.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting product to work on in that regard, because it really does say a lot about a person, and it affects how they walk and how they move. Yeah. And so, yeah, but getting back to my Instagram, it's funny because I do the Instagram. I do all the Instagram stories, everything. And I've had people, who work for me in the past and they actually are like, oh, well, you shouldn't be answering their questions. Like, you're Ruthie Davis. You shouldn't answer. You can't appear to be like, you have to be like bigger than that. And
some
I just
star
think that's
chamber above it all.
Yeah, see, I just don't buy into any of that.
Well, I agree. That's the whole benefit for the consumer, and that whole notion of authenticity is you can interact directly with Ruthie Davis. You can like her picture, comment on it.
She's a real person. She wears the shoes. Ask her how the shoes fit. Yeah. She will tell you. They do Instagram message me. Mm-hmm. I answer a lot of them. I'm very into being down to earth and real with it. I mean, that's kind of my message. I don't position myself as like some famous designer, that's untouchable. Well, obviously I'm not like a household name famous designer, but my point being is like, I very much want to be the every person that you can do this to, and be accessible to people.
Right. Well, so as a female CEO, you present yourself in a certain way. I mean, the laws of style, I talk about how, a lawyer or other men who are white-collar professionals can best present themselves, and it's usually for my money and tailored clothing. But how do you choose to present yourself? Or maybe I'll ask the question in a different way, and I'll go into my 4 W's about what you're wearing today, and we can riff a little bit as to how you present yourself. So, the who, what, where, and when being seasonal of what you have on today. Can we just break
Start
it down?
With that?
Yeah, maybe from the ground up, maybe, because of
great.
shoes? Right.
Well, obviously, I've got Ruthie Davis on.
Okay, and I'm noticing the platform element, right?
Yes,
so
I've got
you
a
walked
platform,
in both
Ruthie Davis
style
both.
and comfort in today.
Exactly,
All right.
exactly. Today I'm actually wearing Ruthie Davis shoes, Cushnie dress.
Cushnie dress.
And I have a Balenciaga bag.
Yes. I've noticed that staring at me all day.
Have Isabel Marant earrings.
Oh, beautiful.
iWatch, Hermes iWatch.
Okay.
And what else do I have on? Oh, my jacket is Rick Owen.
Okay.
Am I missing something?
No, I think you have some other jewelry on, but we can.
Oh, these are
maybe personal items.
They're little. I like all the Paloma Picasso for Tiffany.
For Tiffany,
because it's the words. This is his love.
Yeah.
I'm big on words and messages, and I put them on shoes. A lot of the Disney princess shoes have words on them.
Your hair brooch as well,
these say
not in
angel.
the shot. Okay, nice.
Angel.
Well, and in terms of seasonality, and it may really just be the shoes.
Oh, that's
and the dress.
okay. No, that's a good question. Okay, so I'll jump in there. First of all, I'm going to tell you a few things about Ruthie Davis. I told you I don't like vintage and all that. I like the new.
Right.
Okay. I am obsessed about getting a fresh one. Okay. I like the latest, greatest, newest. I never shop on sale. I don't want sale items. I don't care how great a sale it is because that means it's old. That means it's the last season. That means someone might have tried it on and put it back. Not touching it. I am, like I said, a futurist. I'm always looking forward. So I'm always going to be wearing the latest, greatest, newest. Now, with that said, of course, thank God for the real, where
I was about to say Mark Lee and Terry Lundgren, they must all love you because you're the consumer that they all want.
I want the newest arrival.
So
I only
many
go to
consumers
new arrival.
are conditioned to shop only on sale.
No, and you know what? It's my industry, and I support the industry. Is the way I look on it. Because I want people to shop new arrivals from me too, at full price. So I do it. I try to walk the walk there.
Yeah.
So everything I'm wearing is like brand new season. Nothing's like, it's all like spring 19.
And then you put it on commerce once it's not new, and you take your
once
haircut.
I've worn it, I mean, certain things are classics. You'll keep like that Rick Owen jacket I've had for like a while, like 3 years, like a long time. This will be forever, So my Ruthie Davis boots, I tried, and my shoes, they're very minimal. My shoes, they're very, they're not trendy. They're on trend. Like I'm big on designing shapes that fit with the current fashion.
Okay.
So it's very much about the shapes than the adornment.
It's interesting, as you've described shoes as almost an extension of the foot or an appendage, because that's an interesting way to look at it, that you're not really designing a thing so much as you're fitting it within the woman's.
Well, I mean, it's how you walk around too.
Yeah.
It's like little
it's
cars
in direct
for your
contract
feet.
with you and the planet.
It's interesting because when I used to draw a lot, and obviously now I draw shoes, but when I was growing up, I've looked back at drawings and stuff. I used to draw shoes. I would draw like my ski boot, my topsider. I didn't create.
Do you still have those?
I do have some of those. I know. I got to pull those
out. The retrospective, when you open a brick and mortar, is going to be amazing.
I have pictures I've drawn of cars, like our Jeep. Growing up, we had a Jeep, and then buildings. I like to draw, like I did watercolor at Bowdoin, and I used to do buildings. And then I think back of it, in junior high, under what I wanted to be when I grew up, I wrote architect. So I think of myself still as an architect, with shoes. And I definitely, I'm obsessed with mid-century modern architecture. I like minimalism. Like in my apartment, like my hobby is to keep getting rid of things. Like less is more, less is more. I like the bones. I'm a bones person versus the stuff. Like I like to see the bones of the building. I like to see, that's why I dress very fitted, very, a lot of monochromatic. So getting into your next question of my style, personal style, it's like monochromatic, it's fitted, it's playing with, mid-century modern is very indoors, outdoors.
Right.
A lot of glass.
Yeah.
So you're not really sure if you're in or out. It's all one level. I'm kind of like that with my fashion. I like to play with the cutout. I love cutouts. I love see-through. You see me in a bunch of see-through.
I've seen you in
Here
see-through.
we have cutouts, by the way. I like to play with that, and the same with my shoes.
It's all very PG, listeners, by the way.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I do a lot of clear plexi on my shoes, clear uppers, clear heels. So I'm very excited by either the space or the lack of space.
Right.
And it's really all about the linear sort of package. And, you know, I was thinking about, you know, someone asked me about, you know, what's my look or whatever. And I was like, you know, I can sum it up like at pretty much at any moment, I could be ready to go skiing down a mountain. Like I have a downhill ski racer look. I like an aerodynamic look. You know, it's like it moves.
Well, and you mentioned Bond girl or Bond maybe villainous, right?
Yeah.
And this touches on one of my personal style mandates, or one of the laws of style, is looking capable and elegant, which they may seem at odds with one another, but when you strike that balance right of looking capable for action but still elegant, that's when, you know I've
No,
done
it's
it
that
right.
it's that perfect, again, that collaboration of those two things, the perfect mix. And you know, I have read your book. I am a friend of yours, so I'm aware of you know, your story.
Right.
And I will tell you that I do very much admire what you're doing, and I think it's really, really important and valid. And I do think it's it has makes a huge difference on, you know, how you feel about how your day goes, how you present yourself to people. I really respect people who are buttoned up, you know. And I again, I'll bring it back to my sporting, you know, when you had a sporting event, you had to be prepared. You had to have your equipment, you know, otherwise you were going to be cold, or you weren't going to, you know. So it's like you had to have your hair done properly, right? You're playing a tennis match, had to have you know, had to be in place. You had to have the right shoe. Everything had to be like ready to go. And I think of it as like armor. And I think in the working world, you know, the lawyer world, the fashion world, I really respect people who present themselves as buttoned up and polished, and they, you know, like you said, there's an elegance and there's a personality, sportiness, but it's respectful of other people.
That's a very good point.
You know?
It is about being respectful to others and the sense of occasion that you are in. So whether that is, and really the fourth W is why. Why did you come dressed like this? And probably one of you had various meetings today, but you knew you would be on. And so well, I'll let you answer it, but you know, the sense of occasion that you have over certain things, whether it's a black tie event that we've been to together on occasion, but you're showing up for work and looking work appropriate, I think is becoming a little bit of a lost art.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's self-expression, and I don't do it in a frivolous way. I don't spend hours primping. Right. You know, it's not like that. It's more about, you know, even since I was a young girl and just the family I grew up in, my sisters, my mom, you know, we always laid our outfit out for school the night before. Mm-hmm. So, you know, my outfit for today was picked yesterday. You know, I lay it out, I plan it. You know, and it's not like I'm not one of those people who tries on 20 things before I know it. I'm pretty quick, like that, and that. And, but, you know, I'll figure a few things out. But I do want to do the best. I always like to be the best I can be. If I'm going to if you ask me to a black tie event, I want to look as good as I can look that night. I want to wear, if it's a black tie, I should be in a gown. Mm-hmm. I've got to have a, you know, kick-ass Ruthie Davis shoe. And, you know, I've got to like look, you know, I've got to get my hair. I'm not going to shortchange it. Yeah. Because it's just part of to me, that's the creative outlet. I mean, it's just what you do. Yeah. And so, I'm, you know, obviously I'm really into it. I mean, I love planning outfits. I love personal style, the whole concept of style. Mm-hmm. So it's a hobby, I guess, also. Yeah.
Well, you do a lot of mentoring, both in connection. We have time for one more question, but I think this is a good one to end on because it's really about you giving back. I guess describe that process. I mean, you do it for your business school, for the CFDA, but you know, maybe my question is more, what do you get out of it? Because it is an investment of time to mentor. What do you get out of it, and what have some of those experiences been?
Well, I think I get more out of it than the students, the mentees. I absolutely love working with, you know, young people. Anything that I've done that I can share, you know, I feel like, why not? You know, I wish I had people share more with me. So I'm very vocal about, giving them advice or anything. I always preface it with like, listen, this is just one person's idea. You don't have to take me as the gospel,
Right.
but this is what I think,
Yeah.
But I try not to preach. But I really enjoy the energy and the excitement of young people. It gets me excited. I don't have children, and I have a lot of nieces and nephews. I have a lot of interns, and then I have these people that I mentor, and that to me is just like, I don't know, it's like my thing,
Yeah.
So it really works well for me. I love doing it. And in fact, what day is today? I'm going to University of Delaware Friday, meeting the first kickoff meeting with 9 students that I have a group that I'm mentoring. We're going to actually design some shoes together, some sustainable shoes.
Wow.
So I have like a whole thing I'm doing there. So, yeah, I mean, it's not like I get paid to do those things.
Right.
But it's how you play it forward. And but again, I always leave more inspired, and I feel lucky that they want me to come talk.
Yeah.
I feel honored because it's like I get that, it's fun.
Yeah.
So I'm appreciative of it.
Well, Ruthie, our time is up. That's a wrap. Thanks so much for coming in. People can follow you on your various social media feeds at
Yes. Ruthie_Davis.
And that's both for Twitter and Instagram?
Yes, and then I have Facebook page, Ruthie Davis.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an underscore. Also Pinterest. And Pinterest, and I think that's all I do now, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And your website, which is ruthiedavis.com.
Yes, and they can shop on my website. And if they sign up, they get lots of special deals. We have like a special membership thing, so.
Excellent, excellent. Well, again, thanks for coming in. I'll be
This
seeing
was a
you
lot
very
of fun.
soon. And
yes,
yes,
absolutely.
take care. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to The Laws of Style with Douglas Hand. For more information, go to our website at www.hballp.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Hand of the Law. Thank you for tuning in, and stay stylish.